Times of sharing Durian ASEAN
ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, 早安, good morning, selamat pagi, minglaba. That's all the language I know so far.
I will just say good morning, everybody.
How to say good morning in French again?
I think you can just say bonjour.
Bonjour.
Yeah.
So, Gowri,
Yes.
even though we are so happy right now, greeting our listeners, good morning, but yesterday, something bad happened. Like, not bad, but like,
Actually, it was something very terrible.
very terrible.
And it was all over the news. It was in every online media, every newspaper, all over Facebook, Twitter, all over Google even.
I think probably people already get it what we are going to talk about today.
Of course.
It's about the Sydney hostage or the Sydney siege. They famously term as.
Yeah.
So, what's so important about this Sydney siege? Why is such a huge deal?
Well, there's actually a lot of things that's into this story, and of course it starts with one man actually holding hostages in a Sydney cafe yesterday on Monday, and then they were actually holding up flags of ISIS
No
on
wonder.
the window.
If it's just some crazy dude wanting to kill somebody, probably it would be like not so huge. But it seems like the ideology of ISIS has spread outside of the state of Syria and Iraq. I mean, in terms of invasion of the ideology.
That's right, and also in this case especially, we wouldn't usually probably think of Australia when it comes to the threat of ISIS,
Especially Sydney.
right,
Such a
and we
peaceful
always
place.
think that it's Malaysia, Indonesia, countries with a lot of Muslim people. We always think that it's easier to approach them that way, or to influence the people. But now that it actually happened in Sydney, in Australia, and this guy was holding hostages, and it became a massive hoo-ha last night.
And he demanded that a flag of the ISIS or Islamic State to be delivered to him, and warned that 4 bombs have been planted around the city. Wow, this is like a movie from The Dark Knight, I think.
It is, and it's also very scary because it appears to be the 2 hostages were actually inside the cafe, and the man was just holding on to them, making all these demands like asking for the flag, and of course he needed the ISIL flag to be delivered to him. And then he said, like you mentioned, that there are 4 bombs. He didn't want to say where. He just said that I've planted 4 bombs all around Sydney.
Could
and
it be
it's
like
gonna
he
blow
just
up.
like he just quoted from the
It's
script of
possible.
The Dark
It's-
Knight. It's
it's-
like, I have a few bombs around. You just have to guess where it is. And apparently it appeared that he even said the Shahada. Shahada is the profession of the Islamic faith. It says there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So yeah, there you go. People apparently apparently a few news channels spoke to 2 of the hostages inside the cafe, and all of them actually either were released. Sorry, I'm not sure whether they were released, but they definitely were safe by the squad, the Sydney police squad. And in fact, what they say that the men holding them had made a series of demands, and that is just crazy.
Well, just to give a little summary of the people, it seems a 50-year-old man was pronounced dead. Another man and woman were pronounced dead after being taken to the hospital. 2 other women were just injured, and they're fine. And a 35-year-old woman was also taken to the hospital with a gunshot on her shoulder.
Wow.
So, of course, the siege has ended, according to the live updates here that we're looking at.
So there are 3 dead, 4 injured, including 1 police officer being injured.
And it seems Tony Abbott has also come up with a statement just to address the people. And he said that the National Security Committee of Cabinet will meet shortly to review the situation and also, of course, to prevent such thing from happening again. But it's not something that is within anyone's control if we were to really look at it. For a guy to just go into a cafe and suddenly hold everyone hostage, there was really nothing that the police or even Tony Abbott could have done. It was very just happened all of a sudden.
Apparently, the identity of the person who take hostage the people of Sydney is actually an Iranian-born guy. I'm not sure whether his heritage has something to do with it, but for him to chant the word ISIL or ISIS is definitely something that is worrying to the people in Sydney.
And but we don't have his name, do we?
I'm not sure if we have this name here.
Right, but we will look it up and of course update our listeners on that and any other updates for this Sydney siege. And we are happy that of course it's over and hopefully it doesn't happen again. Something
but
so
what do you
terrifying.
think? Yeah, so terrifying. But what do you think of why? What is the motive of this guy? Is he just a plainly crazy guy that just want to hop on the ISIS bandwagon as just for fun, or is he really a guy who believe in the cause, who believe that he's doing what God want him to be, or what ISIS ideology is supposed to be?
It's probably both. It seems like he did come out of the blue and decided to do this thing, which maybe we don't know. Did he just join the bandwagon? Did he join it a few months back, or when exactly was he influenced by this whole idea? But he's probably been planning it for a long time, or it was just a spur of the moment decision.
And the fact that
thing.
he's born in Iran or Iranian born is a bit dumbfounding, because ISIS is supposed to be a Sunni religion. So there you go. You have someone who is born in Iran who could possibly be a Shia. Who knows? The Sunni there is a minority, but in a way it happened in Sydney. There's also another question to ask, like why it's not happening in other more targeted major city like in the US or in Southeast Asia, for example.
It could also be because the fire has kind of died out on ISIS. We haven't talked about it in months, and he probably wants to reignite the scene and to show us that they are still out there, and ISIS is still going strong, and they still have people all over the world who are fighting for their cause for them.
We should ask the leader of the ISIS there whether did you endorse him, or is he's just some crazy guy that want to fight alongside with you. Anyway, back to Southeast Asia. So there's a lot of issue happening around the corner. Of course, Christmas is on the way. As usual, people in Southeast Asia, we have big malls. Big malls meaning that we like to just, spend more money being a consumer. But that's the side of Southeast Asia that, governments are promoting hugely, which means that governments want society to be spurring the economy and do what's awesome. But at the same time, government are also not doing much on other areas, and I'm talking about sex education. Apparently, sex education from church and state send mixed messages in Vietnam. We all know Vietnam is an atheist country compared to other Southeast Asian, which are hugely religious, but at the same time doesn't mean it is more advanced than other Southeast Asian country when it comes to sex education.
So it seems Vietnam is not going for contraceptive devices, which is funny because, like you mentioned, it is an atheist country. But this whole movement is being spearheaded by some church activists who are advising the people, the young people, against the use of all these contraception devices. And this in turn is resulting in a very high abortion rate in Vietnam. So you have one side of people telling the kids, you have to be safe, use a condom or use.
That's the state part, is it?
Sorry?
The group that encourage to use contraceptive. That's
yes.
the side of the government.
Yes. And then you have these church activists coming in saying, no, this is against the religion and you cannot use these contraception devices and you go for a more natural way. So they actually taught the students how to count the days after your period for when you're ovulating and when you're not. And then you just go according to that, which of course can be very risky because...
But at the same time, I mean, you can get pregnant even though you might not be at your prime egg fertilizing day. Should I put that quote unquote? But yeah, you can get pregnant at any day, anytime, even when you are having your period. The possibility is still there, partly because sperm can travel really fast inside the woman's womb, and it can stay there for a couple of days or hours.
Yes,
so
but it seems that the like we mentioned earlier, the activists are handing out all these leaflets to the students, but the students are very confused right now because which one would they go for? But it also depends on them really. If they feel very religious, of course they would not want to go against the church, and they would follow whatever method that the church is proposing to them. Well, at the same time, if they are not that religious or they don't really care, then and if they're more concerned about going through an abortion, which can also cost a lot of money, then they would go for the contraception devices. But this is not only a problem in Vietnam, like you were mentioning.
yeah, it's happening all over the world, including Malaysia, if you want to say that. Did you know recently there's a survey that shows that or research that shows that Malaysians annually perform 90,000 abortions.
And I think you will like this. One of the
Why do I like this again?
No, sorry, this thing that I'm going to tell you. It seems that the church activists are actually telling people the way that they are teaching them not to have sex before marriage is to advise young people of the true value of love. And if they are already having sex, we tell them to be responsible, to protect life, and to build a family.
Thank you, Gowri. I like this so much. That's the
good.
thing, we believe in religion. You create that family institution, which or you protect that family institution.
So apparently, if you have sex before marriage, that it's no longer the true value of love. And
I mean, I'm not saying the church is wrong or right. I'm just saying that protecting family institution is not an easy task, you know. This bigger scale, of course, is the state institution, religious institution, but the smaller scale of institution would be the family. And of course, family can come in many forms, not necessarily the traditional form of one male, one female, you know, getting married and then have kids, have sex, and then eventually have kids and a family together. But nowadays, especially in modern times, family institution can come in varying different packages. So probably the church might want to adopt a more modern approach on understanding family structure.
That is a very valid point because, like you were mentioning earlier, it can happen anytime. You can count your ovulation dates. You can even take pills, but sometimes it just happens, you know, and there is no proper explanation.
Are you saying that we are animals?
No.
It just happens.
I mean, mistakes can happen, and
why you say it's a mistake? It's not a mistake.
I'm not saying sex is a mistake. I'm saying that when you have sex, even if you're using like contraception, sometimes you can still get pregnant, and it's
true. It's not a 100% protection.
That's where I was heading.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't get my message across very well.
You know that the 100% not having kids, which is what the church said earlier, is to not having sex at all.
And therefore, when that happens, it can really disturb a girl, especially if she's not looking to get pregnant, if she's not ready. Maybe she's still too young to become a mother, and then she has to go through all this hassle of going through an abortion, which can also change her body. And
abortion is quite harmful if it's not being done in a proper way.
Especially not done being within the first few weeks or so. And for the church to just tell people like, okay, just don't have sex or what, that's not a very valid solution.
No, they said have sex after marriage. So they are actually encouraging young people to get married.
And start a family, but not like before.
Yeah, not like before.
Mhm.
And I think the church is having really good intention. They are promoting the true value of love, which is one of the greatest glue to creating a successful family institution. I'm not saying that is wrong, but I think their approach on understanding sex before marriage is might not be accurate. Like, it's not, when people have sex before marriage, it's not a mistake. It's not something that they do because they just want to have fun. Sex is, to understand the fundamental of sex is something where it is part of the human nature to want to have sex, to desire to have sex. But I think the prime motivation here should be about educating young people about what are the risks and how can they protect themselves, but not just to completely, put a blanket over it and say that, hey, just focus on marriage, that's it.
Mm-hmm. And there's actually this one girl here who underwent an abortion, and she said that if someone actually told me I was committing a sin or what, it doesn't actually help, because there's a lot of emotional burden that also goes into performing an abortion. And she said she just wanted support before and after the abortion, not someone blaming her that she committed a sin or that she took away a life, because I'm sure nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to take a life, but in this case, of course, you are in that position where you're just helpless and you have just no other solution to go for.
I totally agree. So, Gowri, I want to ask you.
Yes.
Do you think, personally, do you think we should have sex after marriage?
Definitely, if you want to, it's your choice, and anyone is free to decide if you want to do it before marriage, after marriage. It's totally up to them, and I don't think there should be anyone telling anybody not to do it or when to do it or how to do it.
So do you think the church is doing it rightly for promoting the true value of love?
Well, the church is doing what they are good at, and they are
Good at love.
probably doing this because it's in line with the religion or the Bible, and that's why it depends on the person who's also receiving all this information to think for themselves whether they want to follow it or not.
The reason why I asked is maybe actually has completely nothing to do with the sex topic just now.
Okay.
But it's about relationship. It's what the church has done right is to focus on the strength of relationship, and relationship can come in many form, and this time for this piece of news it comes in a form of nation state relationship. I'm talking about Japanese ties with the Chinese.
Okay. Interesting.
What are you thinking, Gowri?
So we have Japanese PM Shinzo Abe, who wants to walk the talk.
It's not Abe. It's Abe.
It's Abe. Okay.
It's Abe. Shinzo Abe.
So Shinzo Abe wants to walk the talk and improve the bilateral ties with China after his ruling coalition won the parliamentary elections on Sunday.
Well, Gowri, he's the Japanese. He's not an Englishman. So for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, if you know, in Kelantanese, Abe means abang, which is honey. And honey as in like sweetheart. So his election, since Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's election came a day after China held its first state Nanjing Massacre Memorial Ceremony, where Chinese President Xi Jinping criticized Japanese nationalists for denying history, which of course, obviously, they've been doing for quite some time, and it's not welcoming by the global community as well. So the Chinese said that 300,000 civilians were massacred when Japanese troops occupied the city in 1937. I think almost everyone would have heard the Nanjing massacre, where a lot of Chinese died, and a lot of women were being raped, and it was like a bloodbath within the city.
And it seems that some critics are actually saying that his victory is not really a reflection of the public will, but it's more of an economic referendum, as no other party actually stood nearly close enough to deliver any of their pledges. So it's more of the case where the other parties didn't really get an equal chance to compete with him in the elections for people to even vote for them.
So he's actually risking the relationship with China, it seems like, by and in fact the Chinese also give a warning to his Shinzo Abe's administration to tell him to shake it off. The rightist ideology.
And these experts are also quoted as telling the Global Times Chinese edition that the victory may not be a disaster to the Beijing-Tokyo relations, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to improve the bilateral relationship between these two countries.
That's true. They cannot simply cut off the relationship. It's like a stone throw away, China and Japan.
And as it is, their relationship has not been quite smooth over the years. It is troubled by a lot of issues, and they tried to reach a 4-point agreement in November. So hopefully that will improve the relationship between China and Japan.
Yep, hopefully. But, I think one of the key point I take up from this is you have to respect history. You cannot just completely denying it. When we were covering the Berlin Wall anniversary, it was really amazing to see how the Germans actually acknowledge that part of their history, although it was a dark history, but in a way they understood that in order for people to unite as one German together, or one Malaysian, one German, they need to acknowledge, what made them separated in the first place. It's ideological, but it's also because the power divide in the past at that time. If you don't acknowledge what you did wrong in the past, how can you move forward as a nation together?
It's true. A lot of people resort to just forgetting or erasing or even changing history. But well, when you do that, people probably don't know how we got to where we are right now. And of course, our past ancestors, they went through a lot of trouble. Even in this case, and the people from the previous generations had to go through a lot, had to fight a lot. Also in the case of the Berlin Wall, when people were separated from their families, like lovers were separated, friends were separated, and that all that kind of got them to where they are right now. So it's important to remember that whole process and how they got there.
But too bad, Gowri. Too bad China cannot file any complaint to the International Criminal Court, unlike these few NGOs in Cambodia, where they actually file an International Criminal Court complaint against Cambodia's ruling elite for alleged crimes against humanity committed via land grabbing. Oh my God, always land grabbing when it comes to the issues within the Indo-China area.
You know what, I was just thinking that this is really interesting because it's something that is inevitable in every country. There's always the ruling elite who, maybe not every single country in this world, but more often than not, they always feel like they can do something and just get away with it because they are the ruling elite of the country and nobody can hold anything against them. So for Cambodia to actually file charges against the ruling elite is actually quite impressive. It's not something that people would be brave enough to do.
But it's one step backward against it's one step backward for ASEAN, because the countries that are actually filing for this, the organizations, the NGOs, are from Europe, Latin America, Asia, and the US, and they urge ICC prosecutor in a statement to initiate a preliminary examination with a view to opening a full investigation. It's sad because ASEAN has its human rights charter. I'm not sure whether they have utilized it or not. Or is it being reviewed, or is it being strengthened? But one thing for sure, ASEAN is not doing anything about it. Land grabbing is a huge issue, but it seems like other countries outside of Southeast Asia, or organizations outside of Southeast Asia, seems to be more interested in human rights issues.
And they seem to be more concerned about what's happening here. By right, it should have been somebody from the ASEAN region, probably our Prime Minister or Mr. Jokowi, or someone who stood up and said, let's put a stop to this. But instead, it's actually someone who is outside of Asia, from Europe, Latin America, like you mentioned, who has to come in and kind of help us and coach us, like, okay, this is how
we need the church. We need to preach true love, the true meaning of love.
That
And it-
reminds me of Black Eyed Peas song. Where's the love, people? Why are we doing this to each other?
We really need to preach about the true meaning of love, and it's not just about sex before. I mean, it's not about preaching against sex before marriage. It's also about, where is justice? Where is the love?
I think even in Malaysia recently we had a few cases of death in custody, and that is also something that that's not being highlighted that much, especially by the mainstream medias, because of course, how
A majority
scandalous
of
it is.
those who die in in custody in Malaysia are those from a lower socioeconomic background. They don't have a voice, unlike the ruling elite in whichever country.
That it goes back to holding it against the ruling elite again. That we people are just so helpless
Yeah.
because.
So let's complain. Anyway,
Let's go to ICC.
let's make lots of complaints. That's all from us today. I hope you enjoy our news commentary, or I would say complaints as well.
Right, and don't forget to like our Facebook page and drop any comments or feedback over there, and we'll have a look at it. Also follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Oh. And of course, you can always listen to us by your smartphone. If you cannot access to durianasian.com, you can go to Durian ASEAN. You can go to TuneIn and then search for Durian ASEAN
But we will be having our very own Durian ASEAN app very soon as well.
next year.
Yes, so look out for that.